The night was alive with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses, echoing through the grand halls of the opulent mansion. It was a lavish celebration, a gathering of the elite, where the rich and powerful mingled, flaunting their wealth and status in a glittering display. Chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting a warm golden glow over the elegantly dressed guests, each adorned in designer gowns and tailored suits that spoke volumes about their affluence. The aroma of gourmet food wafted through the air, tempting even the most discerning palates. As the clock struck 7, a figure appeared at the entrance of the mansion. He was a simple man, dressed in a plain white shirt and worn-out jeans that seemed to belong to another era. His shoes, scuffed and dusty, told tales of long walks and hard work, contrasting sharply with the polished footwear of the guests around him. His hair was tousled, and he wore no jewelry, save for a modest watch that ticked steadily on his wrist. He looked out of place, almost like a ghost among the living, yet he carried himself with a quiet confidence that was hard to ignore. As he stepped through the grand double doors, the laughter and chatter momentarily hushed. Eyes turned toward him, skepticism and amusement flickering in their gazes. Whispers began to circulate. Who was this man, and what was he doing at such an exclusive event? The simple man took a moment to absorb the scene, the extravagant decorations, the laughter echoing like music, and the palpable air of privilege. He had come here with a purpose, a plan that only he understood. The host of the evening, a well-known businessman, had invited him, urging him to attend this celebration of success. The simple man had agreed, but with a twist. He would don the simplest attire to see how the guests would react to someone who clearly didn't belong in their world. He wanted to observe their reactions, to witness the judgments they would cast upon him, and to see if they would recognize the worth that lay beneath the surface of appearances. As he moved further into the mansion, he felt the weight of their stares. Some guests exchanged glances filled with derision, their laughter tinged with condescension. "Who let that guy in?" one woman scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. A man nearby chuckled, shaking his head. "Must have taken a wrong turn on his way to the laundromat," he joked, eliciting a chorus of laughter from a nearby group. The simple man remained unfazed, his expression calm, almost amused by their ignorance. He was here to gather information, to assess the dynamics of this elite social circle, and he was determined not to be swayed by their mockery. He understood that many of these individuals had built their lives around superficiality, valuing wealth over character. But he was not deterred, he had a purpose, and he intended to see it through. As he ventured deeper into the heart of the party, he felt a strange sense of exhilaration. Each condescending glance and whispered comment only fueled his resolve. He was here to show them that appearances could be deceiving, and that true worth lay far beyond the fabric of one's clothing. With each step, the simple man moved closer to his goal. He scanned the room, searching for the one person who could change everything, the host of the party, his business partner, who would soon reveal the truth behind the facade of wealth and status that surrounded them. Little did the guests know, this seemingly inconsequential man held secrets that could turn their world upside down. As he approached the main hall, ready to confront the judgments cast upon him, he felt a surge of anticipation. Their laughter would soon turn to shock, and the night would unfold in ways they could never have imagined. As the simple man made his way further into the mansion, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of excitement and elitism. The guests, draped in their designer outfits, were engaged in conversations that fluctuated between casual banter and serious business discussions. Yet, amidst the clamor of their interactions, the simple man felt the weight of their stares, sharp, critical, and filled with an unmistakable air of superiority. "Look at him," a well-dressed woman remarked, her voice carrying over the din of laughter. "He must have gotten lost on his way to the grocery store." Her friends giggled, their laughter ringing out like a chorus of judgment. The simple man caught snippets of similar remarks as he passed by groups of guests huddled together, their whispers laced with disdain. "What a joke," another man snorted, adjusting his tie as he eyed the newcomer with faint amusement. "I wonder what he thinks he's doing here. This isn't a charity event." The comment stung, but the simple man remained composed, aware that he was playing a role in a social experiment that promised to reveal the true nature of those around him. He noted the way some guests glanced at each other, exchanging knowing looks as if they were part of an inside joke that excluded him entirely. Their expressions ranged from confusion to outright disdain, as if his presence was an affront to the carefully curated image of success they projected. The simple man felt like an intruder in their world, but he welcomed the challenge. After all, this was precisely why he had come, to observe the social dynamics at play and to witness firsthand how people reacted when confronted with someone who didn't fit their mold. Moving through the crowd, he overheard snippets of conversations filled with references to extravagant vacations, luxury cars, and exclusive clubs. It was a language of wealth, one that he was not fluent in. Yet, he found a certain irony in their discussions, as they boasted about their possessions while dismissing him as inconsequential. They were so focused on status that they failed to see the value of a person's character, their experiences, or the stories they carried. In one corner of the room, a group of women clad in elegant gowns laughed loudly, their voices piercing through the ambient noise. "I can't believe he actually thought he could come here dressed like that," one of them said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "It's almost adorable." The simple man smiled to himself, recognizing that their laughter was rooted in insecurity, an attempt to elevate themselves by belittling someone they perceived as lesser. Despite the mockery, he felt a sense of resolve building within him. Each cruel comment fueled his determination to confront the preconceived notions of those in the room. He had long ago learned that true worth was not defined by outward appearances or the labels stitched into clothing. He was here to challenge the status quo and to remind them that everyone has a story worth telling, regardless of their attire. As he continued to navigate the sea of opulence, he deliberately made eye contact with some of the guests, gauging their reactions. A few looked away, embarrassed by their own judgments, while others met his gaze with a mix of curiosity and confusion. He could sense the shift in the atmosphere as he carried himself with an air of quiet confidence, refusing to shrink away from their scorn. The simple man knew that the night was still young, and the true test was yet to come. He would soon find himself seated at a table that held more significance than any of the guests could fathom. But for now, he relished in the whispers and glances, knowing that each one was a reminder of the societal barriers he was about to dismantle. With each passing moment, the anticipation grew, and he could feel the tide beginning to turn, even if the guests were blissfully unaware of the revelation that awaited them. The opulence of the mansion was nothing short of breathtaking. As the simple man moved deeper into the heart of the celebration, he marveled at the extravagance that surrounded him. The grand foyer, adorned with marble floors that gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, set the stage for an evening of excess. Elaborate floral arrangements filled the space, their vibrant colors juxtaposing the muted tones of the guests' attire. Each detail seemed meticulously curated to impress and showcase the wealth of its owner. In the main hall, a string quartet played softly, their melodies weaving through the conversations like a gentle breeze. The music complemented the laughter and clinking of glasses, creating an ambience that felt both exclusive and unapproachable. Guests mingled in clusters, their voices rising and falling like waves, some animatedly discussing the latest stock market trends, while outros compartilhavam historias de suas férias em ilhas paradisíacas. The buffet table was a sight to behold, laden with an array of gourmet dishes that showcased culinary artistry. Exquisite hors d'oeuvres, delicate pastries, and sumptuous entrees beckoned the guests to indulge. The simple man observed as attendees filled their plates with lavish delicacies, relishing the experience of fine dining while he stood to the side, aware that he was an outsider looking in. As he glanced around, he noticed the decor that exuded wealth, gold accents, rich fabrics, and artwork that adorned the walls, each piece more expensive than the last. It was a world built on the idea of exclusivity, where only a select few were deemed worthy of entry. Yet, amid the splendor, the simple man felt a sense of clarity. He had come not to be impressed but to observe the dynamics of power and privilege that dictated this social landscape. In one corner of the room, a group of businessmen engaged in a heated discussion, their voices rising above the soft strains of music. They exchanged stories of successful ventures, boasting about lucrative deals that had catapulted their status to new heights. The simple man listened intently, recognizing the hunger for validation that drove their conversations. It was a dance of egos, each man trying to outdo the other, and he couldn't help but wonder how many of them were truly happy beyond their wealth and status. As the evening progressed, the guests began to relax, the initial shock of his presence fading into the background. He overheard snippets of conversations that danced between trivial gossip and serious undertones, revealing the insecurities that lay beneath the surface of their glamorous facades. They spoke of their fears, their aspirations, and the relentless pursuit of more money, more power, more recognition. The simple man took a moment to reflect on the juxtaposition of their lives against his own. He had built his success on hard work, perseverance, and the belief that integrity mattered more than appearances. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of purpose. This party was not just a gathering of the elite, it was an opportunity to challenge their perceptions and remind them that true value could not be measured by wealth alone. As the guests continued to engage in their self-congratulatory banter, he felt a thrill of anticipation coursing through him. He was about to disrupt their carefully constructed world, to show them that beneath the layers of silk and satin, there were stories waiting to be told, stories of resilience, of humility, and of the simple yet profound truths that connected them all as human beings. With each passing moment, he could sense the tide shifting, the air thickening with unspoken tension. The time was approaching for him to reveal his true identity and to pull back the curtain on the masquerade that defined this party of luxury. The stage was set, and he was ready to play his part, knowing that the night would end in ways the guests could never have anticipated. As the evening unfolded, the simple man scanned the room for his business partner, the host of the lavish affair. He knew that this was the moment that would set everything in motion. His partner, a well-respected figure in the business community, had orchestrated this gathering with great care, inviting a select group of influential guests to celebrate their latest venture. But what his partner didn't realize was that the simple man had come to test the waters, to expose the superficiality that often accompanied such gatherings. Finally, he spotted his partner across the room, engaged in conversation with a group of executives, all of whom were dressed impeccably in tailored suits. The simple man observed the way his partner commanded attention, his confident demeanor drawing people in as he shared stories of success and ambition. There was a warmth about him that contrasted sharply with the coldness of the elite surrounding them, and the simple man felt a pang of gratitude for the invitation that had brought him to this moment. As he approached, the simple man noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The guests, who had previously dismissed him with disdain, now watched with curiosity, their laughter fading as they recognized the significance of his approach. He could sense the tension in the air, like a tightrope stretched thin, ready to snap at any moment. "Ah, there you are," his partner exclaimed, his face lighting up with recognition as he spotted the simple man. "I'm so glad you could make it. Come, let me introduce you to some of my colleagues." With a broad smile, he gestured for the simple man to join him. The guests looked on, their expressions a mixture of confusion and intrigue as the two men stood side by side. "Everyone, this is my business partner," his partner said, pride evident in his voice. "He's been instrumental in our latest project and has a wealth of experience that I truly admire." The simple man felt a rush of warmth at the praise, but he also sensed the skepticism simmering just beneath the surface of the guests' expressions. Their eyes darted between him and his partner, trying to reconcile the disparity between the two men. "Nice to meet you," the simple man said, extending his hand to the nearest executive, who hesitated before shaking it, his grip tight and unsure. The simple man could feel the judgment lingering in the air, like a cloud of smoke that refused to dissipate. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to challenge their perceptions head-on. As the introductions continued, the simple man listened intently, absorbing the conversations that flowed around him. The executives spoke of profits and projections, their words laced with jargon that seemed designed to impress. Yet, beneath the surface, he sensed an underlying fragility, a concern for image and reputation that overshadowed their discussions of success. "Tell us about your background," one of the executives finally asked, a hint of condescension creeping into his tone. "What brought you into this world of finance?" The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. The simple man took a breath, sensing that this was his opportunity to shift the narrative. "I come from a small town," he began, his voice steady. "I've spent years working my way up, learning the ins and outs of the industry. I believe in hard work and integrity, values that sometimes get lost in the pursuit of success." His gaze swept over the group, gauging their reactions. Some shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged glances filled with skepticism. "Integrity? In business?" another man scoffed, his laughter echoing like a taunt. "Good luck with that. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there." The simple man felt the weight of the remark, but he remained unfazed. He had come to challenge their perceptions, and he was ready to stand his ground. "Perhaps," he replied calmly, "but I've seen how genuine relationships can drive success. It's not just about profits, it's about building a legacy that lasts." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, he could see the wheels turning in their minds, questions forming, doubts arising. His partner, sensing the shift, interjected, "He's right. That's why I value his perspective so much. We need more of that in our industry." The simple man felt a surge of support from his partner, reinforcing the bond they shared and the vision they were working toward. As the conversation continued, the simple man found himself at the center of attention, the guests intrigued by the contrast he presented. The atmosphere was electric, charged with curiosity and disbelief. He was no longer just the simple man in worn-out jeans, he was a catalyst for change, challenging the status quo that defined the party. Little did they know that the true revelation was yet to come, and the night was about to take an unexpected turn that would leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about success, identity, and the value of a person beyond their appearance. As the evening progressed, the simple man felt the shift in energy around him. The initial mockery from the guests had transformed into a tense curiosity, and he could sense that their perceptions were beginning to waver. It was time for him to make a bold move, one that would further challenge their assumptions and solidify his place in this elaborate social experiment. With a purposeful stride, he glanced around the grand hall, taking in the various tables adorned with elegant centerpieces and fine china. Each table represented a different level of status in the room, with the most influential guests seated at the head table, where the light was brightest, and the atmosphere was thick with self-importance. That was the table he had his sights set on. His partner, still engaged in conversation with a few executives, seemed oblivious to the simple man's intentions. But the simple man knew that this was the moment to assert himself, to disrupt the narrative that had been constructed around him. He wanted to show that, despite the disdainful glances and whispered judgments, he belonged right where he was headed. With determination, he made his way toward the head table, where the most powerful figures of the evening sat. The chatter grew quieter as he approached, the eyes of the guests shifting toward him once more. He could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but it only fueled his resolve. This was not just a bold choice, it was a statement, a declaration that he would not be defined by their narrow perceptions. As he reached the table, a hush fell over the crowd. The guests exchanged incredulous glances, disbelief etched on their faces. "What is he doing?" one woman whispered to her friend, her brows furrowed in confusion. The simple man took a deep breath, grounding himself in the knowledge that he was about to challenge everything they thought they knew. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady as he addressed the guests at the table. "I hope you don't mind if I join you." The surprise that washed over their faces was palpable, a mix of shock and disbelief that rendered them momentarily speechless. There was an unspoken rule in the elite circle, one that dictated who was worthy of sitting at such a table, and he was defying that rule with every word. One of the men at the table, a prominent businessman known for his cutthroat tactics, narrowed his eyes. "Do you even belong here?" he asked, a hint of condescension dripping from his voice. The simple man met his gaze unwaveringly, refusing to back down. "I believe that worth is not determined by attire or wealth," he replied, his tone firm but respectful. "I'm here to engage in meaningful conversation and share perspectives that challenge the status quo." The room held its breath, the tension thickening as the guests processed his words. They had expected him to cower or retreat, but instead, he stood his ground, embodying the very values he had come to promote. The prominent businessman exchanged glances with his peers, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The simple man's confidence seemed to unsettle the carefully constructed hierarchy of the evening. "Very well," the businessman finally said, a begrudging acceptance in his tone. "But don't expect any special treatment." As the simple man took a seat at the head table, he felt a surge of empowerment. He was no longer just an observer, he was an active participant in the unfolding narrative. The guests around him shifted in their seats, some casting furtive glances, while others leaned in, intrigued by the audacity of the man who had dared to upend their expectations. Conversations resumed, but there was a palpable change in the air. The simple man engaged with the guests at the table, sharing his insights and experiences, weaving stories that resonated with their own struggles in the world of business. He spoke of perseverance, the importance of authenticity, and the value of relationships built on trust rather than mere transactions. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere began to shift. The guests, who had once looked upon him with disdain, started to see him as a person of substance, a man with a story worth hearing. They began to ask questions, genuinely curious about his journey, eager to understand the lessons he had learned along the way. The simple man felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had taken a bold step, challenging their preconceived notions and proving that true worth transcended appearances. The head table, once a fortress of exclusivity, was now a space where ideas flowed freely, and barriers began to dissolve. As the night wore on, the simple man realized that this was just the beginning. The real transformation was yet to come, and he was ready to unveil the truth that would leave the guests questioning everything they thought they knew about success and the people who inhabited their world. As the simple man settled into his seat at the head table, an unexpected energy began to pulse through the room. The guests, who had once laughed and scoffed at his presence, now leaned in closer, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. It was as if a switch had been flipped, the atmosphere had transformed from one of judgment to one of intrigue. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they processed the audacity of this man who had dared to claim his place among them. "Can you believe he just sat down?" a woman murmured to her companion, her tone a blend of shock and fascination. "He's either incredibly brave or completely delusional." The simple man could hear snippets of conversation around him, and he felt a swell of confidence as he realized that he had succeeded in capturing their attention. The prominent businessman, who had initially challenged him, attempted to regain control of the conversation. "So, what exactly makes you think you can sit at this table?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension once more. But now, it felt less like an attack and more like a challenge the simple man was more than willing to accept. "Because I believe that everyone has something valuable to contribute," he replied calmly, meeting the businessman's gaze with unwavering conviction. "Success isn't just about wealth, it's about perspective, resilience, and the ability to connect with others on a human level." His words hung in the air, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of uncertainty cross the businessman's face. The other guests exchanged glances, their expressions revealing a mix of admiration and skepticism. The simple man continued, sharing anecdotes from his own life, stories of hard work, sacrifice, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He spoke of the importance of empathy in business, of recognizing the humanity in each interaction, and of building relationships based on trust rather than mere transactions. As he spoke, he noticed the subtle shift in their demeanor. The laughter that had once greeted his presence was replaced by thoughtful nods and contemplative silence. The guests were beginning to engage with him not as a mere curiosity but as someone with genuine insights to offer. The simple man felt a sense of vindication. He had successfully challenged the very foundation of their elitist mindset. "Maybe he's onto something," one executive whispered to another, his tone betraying a hint of admiration. "It's refreshing to hear a different perspective." The simple man caught the exchange, and it bolstered his resolve. This was the moment he had hoped for, a chance to open their eyes to a broader understanding of success and humanity. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted again. A loud voice interrupted, cutting through the tension. "Let's get back to the real topics: profits, mergers, and acquisitions." It was a powerful woman, known for her ruthless business tactics. She waved her hand dismissively, as if trying to return the conversation to safer territory. But the simple man wasn't deterred. "I'd argue that the most important mergers happen between people," he countered, a spark of passion igniting in his voice. "When we merge our experiences, our knowledge, and our compassion, that's when true success occurs." The guests fell silent, absorbing his words as they weighed the implications of his statement. He could feel the shift in the room. The laughter and mockery were being replaced by a growing respect for the man who had dared to challenge their beliefs. The air was thick with contemplation, and the simple man knew he was making an impact. He had not only claimed his place at the table, he had begun to reshape the narrative of the evening. As the guests processed his message, he could see the wheels turning in their minds. Doubts about their own perceptions began to surface, and the simple man reveled in the realization that he was not just an outsider anymore. He was a catalyst for change, a voice calling for a deeper understanding of success, one that transcended wealth and status. The shock of the guests was palpable. They were confronted with a truth they had long avoided. The simple man had disrupted their carefully constructed world, and he was determined to see it through to the end. Little did they know, the true revelation was just around the corner, and the night would soon culminate in a way that none of them could have anticipated. The atmosphere around the head table shifted from disbelief to contemplation as the simple man continued to engage his audience. The guests, who had once dismissed him as an outsider, now leaned in, eager to hear more of his perspective. The conversation had taken a life of its own, flowing between personal stories and insights about the nature of success and human connection. But the simple man knew that it was time to bring the evening to a climactic moment, a revelation that would leave the guests utterly astonished. As he glanced around the table, he could see the intrigue in their eyes. Questions lingered unasked, and he could sense their curiosity about who he really was. It was time to unveil the truth behind his presence at this opulent gathering. He took a deep breath and prepared to share the story that would shatter their preconceived notions about wealth and status. "Before we continue," he said, raising his hand slightly to capture their attention, "there's something I need to share with all of you." The guests fell silent, their expressions shifting from amusement to anticipation. "I'm not just a simple man who stumbled into this party. I'm actually a partner in the firm that organized this event." Gasps rippled through the crowd, as if someone had thrown a pebble into a still pond, sending shockwaves across the surface. The prominent businessman's eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth momentarily agape. "What do you mean?" he stammered, clearly struggling to reconcile the man before him with the identity he had assigned to him just moments earlier. The simple man smiled, allowing a moment for the revelation to sink in. "I've been working alongside your esteemed host for years. Our firm has seen tremendous success, but I chose to come tonight in this attire to demonstrate a point, one that I hope resonates with all of you." His gaze swept across the table, locking eyes with each guest in turn, challenging them to reflect on their assumptions. "I wanted to show you that appearances can be deceiving," he continued. "We often judge a person's worth based on their clothing, their wealth, or their connections. But true value lies in one's experiences, the relationships we build, and the integrity we uphold." The guests exchanged incredulous glances, their minds racing to process the implications of his words. The powerful woman who had previously dismissed him leaned forward, her expression shifting from skepticism to intrigue. "You're telling us that you've been with the firm all along? That you're a key player in our industry?" Her tone now carried a mixture of respect and surprise, a stark contrast to the derision she had shown earlier. "Yes," the simple man affirmed, his voice steady. "And I chose to come here tonight not to flaunt my status but to challenge you all to look beyond the surface. We cannot forget the importance of humility and empathy in our pursuits. It's easy to get lost in the noise of wealth and competition, but we must remember the human connections that are the backbone of our success." The room erupted into a murmur, the guests grappling with the revelation that this man, who had once been the subject of their ridicule, was, in fact, a significant player in the very world they inhabited. The shock was palpable, and the simple man reveled in the realization that he had made his point. Their perceptions were shifting, and he had successfully opened their eyes to a deeper understanding of success. As conversations began to spark among the guests, he could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were no longer just participants in a lavish party, they were individuals reflecting on their own values and the authenticity of their relationships. The simple man's heart swelled with pride. He had not only revealed his identity but had also initiated a transformation in the way they viewed each other and the world around them. In that moment, the simple man knew that he had accomplished what he set out to do. He had disrupted the status quo, challenged the elitism that permeated the room, and reminded everyone that true wealth was not measured in currency but in character and connection. As the evening continued, he felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, knowing that the night would culminate in a newfound awareness that would resonate long after the final toast was made. As the simple man's revelation settled over the head table, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The guests, once consumed by their own status and wealth, began to engage with one another in a way that felt genuine and open. The pretense that had defined their interactions now felt heavy and outdated, replaced by a sense of vulnerability and curiosity. Conversations erupted as guests turned to each other, sharing their own stories. "Can you believe we almost missed this opportunity?" one man remarked, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've been so caught up in my own successes that I forgot to look around and appreciate the people in my life." The simple man smiled, recognizing the awakening happening around him. The powerful woman who had earlier dismissed him leaned closer, her expression softening. "I tend to get lost in the numbers and the deals. It's refreshing to hear someone remind us of the importance of connection," she admitted. "I've lost touch with some of my closest colleagues because I was too focused on hitting targets." The simple man nodded, encouraging her to continue. "It's easy to do," he replied. "In our pursuit of success, we often forget that the relationships we build can be the most rewarding aspect of our careers. It's those connections that can lead to opportunities and collaborations we never imagined." As he spoke, he noticed the guests around the table began to share their own fears and aspirations. The conversation flowed freely, moving from business to personal anecdotes, and for the first time that evening, there was a palpable sense of camaraderie. The barriers that had initially separated them began to dissolve, replaced by a collective realization that they were more alike than different. A young executive, who had been relatively quiet throughout the evening, finally spoke up. "I've always felt pressure to present a certain image," he confessed, his voice shaky but resolute. "I thought I had to wear the right suit and show off my achievements to be taken seriously. Hearing you speak about authenticity is a wake-up call for me." The simple man's heart swelled with hope. This was what he had come to achieve, to inspire others to embrace their true selves and recognize the value of authenticity over appearances. He encouraged the young executive, "Your worth is not defined by your clothing or the power of your title. It's about the impact you have on others and the way you choose to lead." The conversation continued to evolve as more guests chimed in, sharing their own struggles with the pressures of their positions. They spoke of the challenges of maintaining a work-life balance, the fear of failure, and the desire for genuine connections in a world that often prioritized superficial interactions. The simple man listened intently, feeling a sense of connection grow among them, a bond that he had hoped to foster. As the evening progressed, the laughter returned, but this time it was different. It was filled with warmth and understanding, a shared joy that transcended the boundaries of wealth and status. Guests began to express their gratitude for one another, acknowledging the support and inspiration they found in their peers. "I've always admired your work ethic," one woman said to another, who looked pleasantly surprised by the compliment. "I'd love to collaborate on a project together." Amidst the chatter, the simple man felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had come to this party as an outsider, but he had transformed the evening into something meaningful, a space for reflection, growth, and connection. The guests, who had initially viewed him with skepticism, now regarded him as a catalyst for change, a reminder that true success is rooted in relationships and authenticity. As the night drew to a close, the simple man was approached by his partner, a look of admiration on his face. "I knew you could do it," he said, clapping the simple man on the shoulder. "You've turned this evening into something special." The simple man smiled, grateful for the support and recognition. The guests began to gather their belongings, but not before exchanging contact information and making plans to reconnect. The simple man watched as they embraced the spirit of collaboration and camaraderie he had hoped to inspire. As they exited the mansion, there was a renewed sense of energy and purpose in the air, a commitment to embracing authenticity and valuing the connections they had forged. In that moment, the simple man understood that his mission had been accomplished. He had not only revealed his identity but had also sparked a transformation in the way these influential individuals viewed one another and the world around them. The night had become a celebration of connection, authenticity, and the realization that true wealth lies in the relationships we nurture along the way.